Welcome back into another episode of Rock Boys Football. Today we are going to continue with our team predictions, evaluations, analysis, and overview. And we are going to do the Clemson Tigers. I think my initial thoughts is they do lose, obviously, Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, and a couple other guys on the offensive side of the ball. But this team is a very, very talented team that has pretty much competed for a championship the last 5 years. Dabo Sweeney runs a really tight ship, and this team is poised to compete again. So I'm going to kick it over to Dylan. We're going to get right back in before we go. We appreciate you guys supporting, liking, subscribing. Let us know what video ideas you have for the future. And without further ado, Dill, what do you got?
So, the first thing is they're very fortunate to be able to replace Trevor Lawrence with a quarterback who actually has some game action and has proven himself to be pretty much a quality starter, you think, at this point.
Yep.
With the potential to be really good. Obviously never going to fully replace Trevor Lawrence. He's one of the best college quarterbacks of all time, possibly, both throwing and athletically. So you're not going to fully replace him, but they do have somebody stepping in who's ready to kind of keep the ship going, if you will. My biggest issue is I didn't think it was a wildly talented offense aside from Trevor Lawrence. And maybe you could argue Etienne, but he seemed to take a bit of a step back last year. So it's do I think Ulianga is a very solid guy? Yes, but they're losing all their wideouts. Granted, they're getting two back who are stars, but offensive line's brutal. Thought it was brutal last year. I think it's going to be brutal this year. So I don't see it. I don't see this being nearly the offense it was last year because I don't see how they're going to replace Trevor Lawrence. And if you can't protect, Trevor Lawrence could make it work, but I don't know if they'll be able to roll that.
Yeah. I have some pretty similar. I've watched a lot of Clemson film during summer scouting because I do think they're a very talented team and that defense is really fun to watch. But starting on the offensive side of the ball, he's a bona fide star. I think we saw that in the games he appeared in early, and it was almost a blessing in disguise that Trevor Lawrence missed a few games. Give DJ some meaningful reps to come into this year. At the receiving position, I honestly think they might be a better unit because I think Justin Ross is easily better than Cornell Powell or Amari Rodgers. That being said, Amari Rodgers he was really effective for them kind of out of the slot. He was a good playmaker for Trevor Lawrence to get the ball to, but Justin Ross, I think, is way more talented. And if he comes back healthy and ready to roll, I think he's gonna be really, really good for that team going forward. The offensive line, I think, is the biggest concern. You noted Travis Etienne took a step back. I wouldn't, in my mind, I don't know if it was a step back as much as that just offense just wasn't really giving him much room because he was really effective outside of the tackles when asked to run inside.
That's a fair point. He wasn't. They were really bad up front, but you're right because he wasn't an ultra effective wideout catching the ball.
And if you look at where they've recruited, maybe they've recruited very, very well. But a position group they might not have recruited that well in is that offensive line. I think Jackson Carman's been their best recruit in the last 4 years. Obviously, he's playing on Sundays. Will Putnam was a good recruit. Walker Parks was a good recruit. Those guys are some good guys coming out of high school. I think Jordan McFadden's their best guy at left tackle. I think he's got the body to be a very good tackle.
Well, they hope. They're switching him from the right side, and I didn't think he was
He wasn't great.
I thought he was a good run blocker. He could move guys, but
he's a beast.
I didn't see the athlete quite that you'd want at left tackle.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing is I think all Clemson fans listening to this, they know they're gonna go at the very least 11-1. At the very least, they're the only game I think they can lose is Georgia. I think every other team they play isn't really going to push them. They don't play Miami, and it doesn't look like they play UNC either. So they really have a cakewalk schedule. So that offensive line will be okay for those games. But when you play Georgia September 4th, you better be ready to block because that defensive line is one of the best in the country, if not the best. And so we're going to see September 4th if this line can win a national championship because it's easily the weakest unit on this football team. And they only really returned 37 total starts. So it's not only is it like not proven that great on the field, but it's not that experienced either. And so yeah, I mean, at the running back position, we talked about Will Shipley a little bit before the show. I think he's going to be special. I mean, it's hard for a true freshman sometimes to come in and make that big of an impact. This kid, from what I've heard in the spring, was really, really impressive. So I'm excited to kind of see what he has. And then Lynn Dixon, like I'm rooting for this kid. He sat behind Travis Etienne for 3 years. Travis Etienne probably should have left it 2 years ago, or a year ago. Didn't. So Lynn Dixon really hasn't gotten his chance to shine, but I think he does have some really good shake to him, and I'm excited to see what he brings to the table in the backfield for the Clemson Tigers.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I'll add, I do actually agree with you in terms of their pass catchers being very possibly a better unit because I think EJ Williams should have been playing a little more. I thought his game looked really good. I know he was a super high recruit. Obviously, Justin Ross would have been the best by a mile on that offense, or at least in the wide receiver room. And then that Braden Galloway, you just hope he gets better, plays a little more consistent. But that's the type of tight end that you can really use effectively.
Yeah, I agree.
It didn't seem like he took hold last year for whatever reason, but big, athletic.
Yep.
Yeah, I think if they find out some way to get him the ball a little more and use him more effectively, he can certainly be a weapon there. So
yeah, Braden Galloway is actually their leading pass catcher from last year. So, but only at 300 yards in an offense that threw for it's over 4,000 yards they threw for, so almost over 4,000 yards. So, I mean, that's really not that much production you have returning. Again, Justin Ross, we can't forget, is coming back. I also, from what I've been reading, I watched a little bit of the spring game. Joseph, I think you say Nagata, 6'3", 220, big body. I heard Dabo Sweeney was on the field talking as the spring game went, and he was saying, like, we're excited for this kid. He's cleaning up the route running. He's big and strong and can move. So that's another guy who is just another weapon for this Clemson Tigers team. And honestly, this offense looks good if they can protect DJ and if they can run the ball. I mean, that's another thing I might add is they really didn't prove to run the ball very effectively, and they had one of the best running backs in the country, if not the best. So that's got to change.
But that's function of a small, weak, like just a smaller, not physical, not particularly athletic offensive line. Like they just don't look like pro guys, which you'd kind of expect to see on a Clemson like team that's gonna be competing for titles, you hope. So
yeah,
it's just surprising that they're putting that out there on the offensive line.
Really, I mean, it's weird. I was looking through the 24/7 recruiting before the episode, and like they haven't recruited that well. I mean, I can list in 2019 their best recruit was Willem Putnam, who is a 4-star at 101 in the country. I mean, that's not crazy good. In 2020, which was the third best recruiting class in the country, their best offensive lineman was not till 50 at Walker Parks.
But that doesn't stun me because they don't put offensive linemen in the pros.
That's true.
Really.
Yeah,
like I can't remember a Clemson offensive lineman getting picked hot. I mean,
actually, that was noted. That was noted in my reading. Jackson Carmen was the first Clemson offensive lineman to be picked in the first 2 rounds.
That sucks. And obviously, if you're a top tier offensive lineman, you're probably looking at the Ohio States, Bama, and Georgia, who are.
And that's in Dabo Sweeney's tenure. Out of the 69 players drafted in Dabo Sweeney's tenure, there's only been 5 offensive linemen who've been drafted. And
I mean,
Jackson Carmen. Yeah, isn't that stunning? When you think about all the talent Clemson's put into that's crazy. And it showed. It doesn't show when you play teams like Wake Forest, when you play teams like Syracuse, when you play teams like Boston College. It doesn't show there, but it shows when you go play Ohio State and you can't protect Trevor Lawrence. I mean, watch the film on that game.
They just can't develop guys because they play such a soft schedule every year. and just not even just soft on like weaker teams, but teams that aren't particularly physical. It's almost like a little bit of a Big 12 like
I don't
situation
know,
where,
but they developed those defensive linemen, so
well, they have done it in the past, but
Colin Farrell, Dexter Lawrence.
that is a bit more of an athletic, like
Yeah.
doesn't take the development as much
And
to me if you're
that's
a
a
big,
position
strong
class.
athlete.
I mean, we might as well just move over. That's kind of our thoughts on this offense. Again, it's gonna be good. It's gonna take them as far as that offensive line can play.
Yeah.
And it's tough to be a great offense when your offensive line can't protect. We saw that with the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. We see it time and time again. So you got to be able to protect your quarterback. Got to be able to run the football. And that's pretty much what's Clemson's limiting factor. And we're going to see September 4th against Georgia. Anyways, let's move to the defensive side of the ball. And you have to talk about this defensive line. Talk about a position they just recruit phenomenally at. It's right here. I mean, this whole starting defense is 5-star, former 5-stars. We'll start with Brian Brzee and Miles Murphy, who were true freshmen last year and were absolutely tremendous. And you only think they're going to get better. You got Xavier Thomas, who's a former 5-star. You got Tyler Davis, who was, I think, a high 4, maybe 5-star. And you got KJ Henry, who was another 5-star. I mean, these guys are just loaded with talent. Xavier Thomas is a guy who kind of got hampered by injuries, kind of fell behind on the depth chart. I heard he had COVID last year. So I'm looking for a big year out of that cat. This defensive line is loaded with star power.
The thing they're going to need to prove is that they have a guy who can win consistently on the edge, because I think they're big, physical, athletic, but they don't have anybody who I saw last year who was like a particularly bendy or good on the edge. Like they were more win with physicality than technique and burst on the edge. So I think that's an important thing to have when you're going up against really good teams. But that's like a small quibble, because this defensive line, I should say, is incredible, and it was super young, and yeah, you'd think they're going to be ready to rock and roll for real. So
I think you like Miles Murphy he's playing an 18-year-old last year. Can you develop some of that? Can you develop a more refined pass rusher? I think you can. That dude's used to winning in high school just by pushing kids over and being an athlete. He still can do that at the college level, but now you mix in some more technique to his pass rush, and he's going to be a dog. Brian Brzee is pretty much just a full monster already. He was dominating dudes last year. I expected him to do the same. He was a monster in the spring game. They just couldn't block him. He was getting frustrated because he had like 3 sacks that you can't tackle the quarterback. But yeah,
that's definitely something he would make a big stink about.
Yeah, but I love this dude.
He's a hardo move. But.
Yeah, but he competes. I see a lot of his workout videos. Dude wants to win. He puts in the work.
Oh, he's an animal. I have nothing against him.
He's going to be a top 5 pick in 2 years. Let's move to this linebacker unit that probably one of the more experienced units in the country, with super senior James Skalski, who, I like the football player. I think Clemson fans, he reminds me a little bit of Ben Bowler. Maybe not the best athlete, the neck roll too. Maybe not the best athlete out there, but just tremendous football sense. Very, very tough tackler and just a leader of men. Him coming back for a 6th year, I think, is big for Clemson. And just kind of a younger defense. He's going to be kind of that leader, him and Baylon Spector. Obviously, you have Jake Venables, who we've seen play a decent amount because Skalski just can't stay on the field. Just wants to rock.
Yeah, it's 2 straight years of bad.
Oh, that's too bad. I feel really bad.
Getting kicked out of the game.
But
in all honesty, really can't keep happening, like, because it hurt them badly. I'd say in probably both games. So.
And he's their captain out there. It's not only your starting middle linebacker, it's the guys who gets the guys lined up. It's the captain of the defense. As James Skalski, you can't do that. You can't put your team in that position. I'm sure he knows that. I'm sure nobody feels worse about it than him. So.
Yeah, but now it's happened twice, and 2 big losses for that Clemson team. So
he can't let it happen again. I agree. But yeah, I think that Clemson linebacker core is just as experienced as it comes, and then you have that young Trent Simpson, who's another 5-star on that defense, kind of playing that outside linebacker role. He's gonna be good for them too. And let's move on to the second.
They need a more athletic player.
Yeah, to balance out Specter, and
Skalski
I agree. A little bit slower,
bigger, stiffer,
a little bit more box linebackers. Yeah. Trent Simpson can kind of go edge to edge, go sideline to sideline a little bit more. I agree with that. Moving to the secondary unit, I mean Andrew Booth is very, very good. I've seen him on All-American teams. I think he's a favorite to be a first team All-ACC guy, maybe an All-American guy. There's some other good cornerbacks out there. But he's a great cornerback one. There's not many wide receivers that are going to blow him out of the water. Obviously losing Kendrick hurts, but they do have, Sheridan Jones, who should be a solid 2 as well. That is a kind of a unit they've recruited pretty well. So I'm not too concerned about them. Andrew Booth's a stud. Sheridan Jones is very good. And then in the back end, you got Nolan Turner, who, is he another 6-year senior? He's been there for a hot minute.
He's been there. He's been playing too. So
yeah, no, I think he is a 6-year senior.
Which on some level, there's like an element of concern, like if you can't go pro in 6 years or 5 years, I should say.
Yep.
There's some part of you that's like, well, you're a solid player, but like, if you're not going pro on teams like Clemson, like it seems like, well, why can't they replace you? Because they're putting a ton of guys in the league. So
yeah, if I'm down,
I think the safety unit's okay. I think it struggled a little bit last year. I just notably Notre Dame hit them with a fair amount of deep balls, and they look like as a secondary they struggled dealing with the size of Notre Dame. So like thinking when they're gonna go play Georgia with guys like Eric Gilbert or the other tight end, like you're gonna want to match up a little better with the size, and we'll see if they can do it. But it did kill them last year. That number 11 for Skronik and the other guy, I think it was number 88. They were both their size and physicality really gave Clemson some problems. So we'll see if they can improve that and be a little sharper against bigger, more physical wideouts, because giving up 50 to Notre Dame is not great. Obviously they did tighten it up in the next game, but that we'll see.
Dominated that next game, I agree. But yeah, again, on Nolan Turner, if you ask Dabo, are you happy you have Nolan Turner back? I'm sure he's thrilled to have a 6-year senior at the back end. Kind of like Skalski is the leader of the backers. Nolan Turner is kind of the leader and a very smart football player in the back end. I'm sure Dabo's not complaining about that. And so overall, we talked about this. We're looking at their schedule. Really, the biggest game of the season is the first game, September 4th against Georgia. And I think this is where DJ's extra reps really come in. Now you don't have a redshirt freshman who hasn't played. Yeah. He's played meaningful snaps against Notre Dame and BC. He's ready to rock and roll. Clemson fans have seen him be very good. So, that's not their Super Bowl, the regular season, but I just don't see. I'm looking, if they're not playing Miami or UNC, there's not that many games that
Yeah, and presumably they'll get them in the conference title game. So I imagine they'll play them.
That's true. They'll get one of those two. Yep. And they play NC State at home, away on the road and at NC State. That's a tough one because the Rock Boys do like NC State, but
NC State will be able to play some ball.
You gotta think they're favored.
Problem is, it's just such a big talent mismatch with them and everybody else they play.
In the ACC, it's not close.
Maybe Miami or UNC, but even them, they don't look like they totally belong most times. They don't play. So
Miami got blown out by Clemson, and honestly, that game could have been a lot more ugly than it was. So, it was pretty ugly. It was 42-17. So. I think that'll do it for what we think the Clemson Tigers. That's one more thing I would ask you, Dill, before we leave. If Clemson loses to Georgia and then they run the table and win the ACC, in a 4-team playoff, which it's going to be, it's not. I don't think the ball is going to be in their court because I think OU runs the table in the Big 12 and gets in. The SEC champion, whether that's Georgia or Alabama or another team, gets in. Ohio State, if they run the table, is going to get in, and then if a Pac-12 team runs the table, like Clemson might get left out.
What'll be a massive problem for them, I think, is if they lose to Georgia and Georgia runs the table, loses to Bama in the SEC title,
yep.
and then you're going to get the 2 SEC as we've seen in the past. So that seems like
Oklahoma. Yeah.
I mean, you say one of the Big 10, Big 12 teams are lock, which I think is fair this year. Then Clemson's going to be in like a really tough spot, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And this might be one of the first times we've seen them out of the playoffs in a really long time. So,
I mean, unless they just maybe wax everybody else by like in no games are close, then it'll be hard to leave them out. But
yeah, but it'd be hard to leave out a Georgia team that beat them head to head and lost to Alabama.
It'd be like if the Big 12 team loses one. I think then it'll be
that
like,
is
well,
closer.
you're gonna put a 1-loss Oklahoma, who maybe lost to like Texas or something.
And it depends on how that loss to Georgia looks. If it's you competing, if you're not competing. But overall, I mean, on the defensive side of the ball, there's a lot of answers. You know what you have. You have a top 5 defense, possibly top 3 defense. The offense, the talent's there in the skill positions. I like the running backs. I like the quarterbacks. I like the wideouts. Can you protect DJ and can you run the ball is kind of what I'm wondering. And honestly, I'm not optimistic, but we're going to see. We're going to see if they can.
I will add, Uliungalele is not the most athletic quarterback in the world, so
that's true. He's hard to bring down. But he's not like Trevor Lawrence making people miss. So I agree.
Trevor Lawrence's weapon is if you blitz him, even if they couldn't pick it up well, like he takes off. He's a problem, and he's super fast. So and he could throw on the run and move and do a lot of that. So well, I don't know. Uliungalele, he was doing a lot of pocket passing in the games I saw it. We'll see if they can kind of roll into more spread type plays with a little bit play action and getting outside the pocket and throwing if he can do that as effectively as
he could throw on the run really well. I just think the protection is going to be possibly a problem. That's why you might want to get him outside of the pocket. But yeah, that'll do it. Thank you guys for listening. This Clemson team is very talented. We look forward to watching them, especially on September 4th. Let us know in the comments what we're missing, what we're wrong on, what we're right on. We love engaging with y'all. And we will talk to you all soon. Peace.